Hello, everyone. My name is Piers, CEO of RDX Works, the development team behind the Radix protocol and a bunch of other things happening in the Radix ecosystem. Today, I'm joined by Matthew Hine, our Chief Product Officer, Russell Harvey, our Chief Technology Officer, and Adam Simmons, our Chief Strategy Officer. So, Adam, over to you. I think we've got some questions from the community, right?
We've got some really good ones. And the first is kicking off with the recent event, which was, of course, the Alexandria preview event. And it's a simple one. What are our thoughts on the Scripto debut? And what has the feedback been like? And has anything actionable been suggested yet? And that seems like a good question for Russell.
Our thoughts are that it went terrific. The response has been overwhelmingly positive. This is something that while we tested it internally a great deal, we tested Scripto with some DeFi projects and their developers. We tested it with some smaller groups, but the moment when something actually goes live to the public is, of course, the true test. And we have been very, very happy to see that the reactions are just extraordinarily positive. In fact, the most common thing we see is, this is so easy, that people come in and go, it's like they're searching for the complexity that they expect should be there when they get their little candy machine going or whatever it is, and not finding it, which was exactly our goal, which is to make it so if what you are doing is pushing assets around, this should be completely straightforward, simple, no-brainer. And that's exactly what we're getting. So the team has been extraordinarily happy. I think the feedback has also just been universally, it's on, I like this, and could we also get this? It's like on additional feature stuff. And as far as anything being actionable, the main thing we wanted confirmation on is that the next things that we're adding, we had an internal priority list, because of course, at the preview event and at Alexandria itself, Scripto is not done. You can think of it as, this is 0.1. This is the kickoff for the language, and the tools are in a state where you can start building useful things and learning useful things, and your lessons will apply all the way up to when you ultimately ship on Babylon. But we had this priority list of what are the things to focus on next, what are the most important things. And we've been quite happy to see that the feedback in all the socials, particularly in the detailed discussions happening on Discord, is that the things that the community want align very well with what our priorities were already set for internally. And just for those that aren't in those channels, number one thing we're hearing from everyone is NFTs are priority number one. I want to have, what does a Radix NFT look like? Which was already number one on our list. And so it's nice to see everybody, and a lot of the solutions that people are leaping to, there's a way where you can build something in sort of a Solidity type fashion where you keep, I'm going to keep a map of addresses and some data about that address kind of thing. It's a bookkeeping exercise. And there's a lot of, if I want to have an individual debt position for a person or something like that. And so without using NFTs, this is a tough thing to do without just doing some internal bookkeeping. And so a lot of the things people are getting hung up on are just areas where we've successfully convinced them to adjust their thinking to go, I'm doing bookkeeping right now. This feels like this is not the Scripto way. And the answer is, yes, it's not the Scripto way. You need an NFT to do this, what you're describing. And so we're full speed on that. Barring us discovering something that is dramatically, that we're dramatically unhappy with in our NFT implementation, that will be available by Alexandria. So we're only a couple weeks away from being able to play with NFTs and Scripto. And then the other thing that's come up a lot is just basically people wanting to when they get into the details, they're looking at badges and tokens and trying to understand what specifically are the difference between these things. And so we're actually going to be simplifying our model of those and continuing the use of badges as a teaching concept, but making it so the platform feels more, as far as you can use them interchangeably as you want in the right scenarios. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And the last thing is that we knew that our first take at the resource model was very simple, as far as you can just kind of do, okay, you can have a fixed supply thing, or you can have a mutable supply thing, which is familiar from other ledgers, but we knew we wanted to do more. And we have been seeing the community responding to that they want finer grained controls over how exactly their resource behaves. Like just as a simple example, it should always be burnable, but I can never mint any more supply, something like that. That's something we're also in the middle of. We just completed a big internal discussion and some prototyping of changing making our resource model more powerful and more customizable without making it intimidating. And we're happy with how it's going. And I expect that if that does not release by Alexandria, that'll be the top of the list for shortly thereafter.
Yeah, in a way, that's been one of the cool things about the community reaction is people will we talk about the badge model. We have this idea of rather than having just this list of authorizations, you issue this badge to people and that badge allows you to do things. And it's been fun to watch people immediately come back will be like, well, wouldn't it be cool then if you I want some ability to be giving a badge, but then being able to pull it back from them when I don't want them to have authorization is more how would I implement that? And it's we go, yeah, just wait a little bit. We know exactly what you're talking about. We've been talking about that for 6 months. This is we know that's going to be necessary. It's just, we're very much in MVP mode right now of getting the top features out for people's crypto, and then we kind of roll things out afterwards. So these more powerful resource features are so crucial to the asset-oriented way of doing things. You need to be able to, if you're separating your logic from your assets, which is one of the big philosophical things we want to talk about more, the resources themselves, when you're requesting a resource from the platform, you need to be able to configure that with some fairly powerful things to be able to sort of control what its physical behavior is. And so it's a lot of the questions people are asking are going right to this, are I want a little bit different physical behavior. It's yep, we're with you. It's coming. And so it's been really cool hearing that we are, we've been guiding the roadmap based on the feedback we've got from people, but it's it wasn't just a single point thing of the couple people we were talking to. As more people coming in, we're just hearing these common themes being echoed by people as people start really exploring. And so, we will definitely find things that we haven't thought of, but so far the philosophy of Scripto has been really borne out by people playing around with it. It's been really, really cool to see.
It's been amazing to see how quickly people understood the power of the extra concepts as well. Badges was one of those ones that I was I didn't know how long it would take people to go, oh, this makes doing permissioning so much more easy. And, from the point of view of building DAOs, or from the point of view of building more complex organizational structures behind the administration of something. But it was almost immediately the thing that people instantly oh, that's amazing. And they were posting proper enterprise grade what's it called, permissioning models and things like that. I mean, couldn't you imagine if you could implement something like this using badges? And it's this is when it starts to get, because you go from here's a simple idea, let's put some money in it, to, well, now we need to think about how that actually is administered in a fashion that isn't a little bit insane. And that's kind of what a lot of DeFi is at the moment. So that was amazing.
I'm simple. I just love the fact that you retweeted something earlier today of someone being first time Scripto, first time Rust, first time building dApps. In less than a weekend, I managed to contribute a crowdsourcing campaign dApp. Surprised how easy it was. Yeah. A couple of weeks out of the first public demo of it, getting a tweet like that is amazing. And testament to just what great work the people working on this have done.
I
love seeing the reactions from people that were oh, that's what you meant. We're pushing blogs out and that kind of stuff, but people that are actually going to GitHub and checking it out and going through go, oh, okay, that's what you mean by simply and more secure at the same time. It's hard to get this across in marketing copy, but what should be the case is if you're a real developer and you get your hands on it, you should feel it, and that's what people seem to be doing right now.
I think in terms of actionable, from my experience so far, with sort of putting anything out, you get your first wave of responses, which are good indicators of whether or not you're on the right path. And then, but actionable things tend to take a bit longer. There's been some great suggestions, but a lot of the suggestions are very much in line with what we're already thinking and what we're expecting to put into it in the very near future. It's just it's reiteration of what the way that we're thinking, and that people are thinking along the same lines, and they're kind of getting into the groove of the Radix model. I think the really actionable stuff will take longer to come out. We've been working on this for like 18 months. We've been thinking about it for a very long time. There's a lot of just stuff to get out and explain, but then the action, like the really like deep actionable stuff that will continue to evolve this language and make it so exciting will be when people are really starting to push the limits or sort of like expand beyond what DeFi and Solidity allows you to do and start add complexity to it. And that's where I think the really actionable stuff that will help make this language even stronger and even more interesting for the DeFi ecosystem will start to come in.
Totally true. Yep.
Awesome. So that segues us really nicely into the second question, actually, which is, are we surprised with the first few code examples produced and like how quickly some of these things have been made?
I mean, I was pleasantly surprised. It's sort of like I hoped very much that we would see real examples quickly, and we have. It's nice to have your hopes borne out like that. Flash loans was actually one that it definitely requires a little more, like you can think of it as when you're developing in Scripto, even if you know nothing about Rust whatsoever, you can come in and start just kind of, copying mimicking the things that you see already and being productive. To do the flash loan actually required a little bit deeper knowledge of like how to do an arbitrary function call and that sort of thing. So I was happy to see it show up. We were quite tickled, since I know this is one that is a flash loans are an app with a very storied history. So it was nice to see one appear so quickly for Scripto.
Yeah, especially with the audience, I think, that's seen it. Like we haven't gotten Alexandria launch yet. Like this was all, basically we did this rough preview of it at the Ape event. And, we posted like Russ's live stream kind of explaining how some things worked. And we opened up the GitHub repo and it's out there, but it's not really launched per se. So like the number of people, kind of to go along with the examples, the thing that I've been really a little bit surprised about, but also, pleasantly pleased that this is going well, is the amount of people that we've had that were drawn to it, even at that pre-release level, people that were like signing up to the developers mailing list that we've got right now. I haven't checked recently, but we've got like well over 200 signups from people that just kind of, were watching our channels enough to see, oh, there's this thing going on, and they plugged in. They're like, this is cool. I want to get involved, and I want to get more information about it, and signed up. So like, we are so early on with people, and particularly when we haven't really, we haven't called this a launch yet. Already people experimenting and checking code in and doing examples is pretty gratifying. We weren't counting on that, but it's cool to see.
Yeah. There's even the attention at the Ape event itself. Like we had, I think, 6,000 people tune in live to the keynote, and also the post bit and the YouTube videos. I haven't checked today, but like the Radix report last week, it was a good couple of thousand views on the VODs as well for a pretty dev intensive event.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing, especially talking to people, we talked to a bunch of people at the preview event during the breaks and after the event was over. And the single most common thing I heard, other than, is that all there is to it? Like that's simple to get it working, was everything you did worked. It all worked. And for people coming into, that are used to programming on distributed ledgers, I had forgotten how unusual that was, that the execution path actually doesn't fail. It's durable. It works. Everything runs. So that was the other nice thing to hear, is that people are recognizing that this space is quite immature when it comes to developer tooling, and even having to the point of the tools that we give to you function reliably is above the watermark that already exists. Just that simple. Yeah, everything that we put out works. So it was unexpected feedback to hear, but it was a good reminder that this is a space that is quite primitive from the developer experience.
Steve Jobs has this wonderful story that he tells in one of his interviews about reading this article about how the different like levels of energy efficiency of animals. And it was a ranked list, and like at the very top was the albatross in terms of how energy efficient it was for soaring, and the human was like very far down. It was something like 50 on the list or something like that. However, if you put a human on a bicycle, then it becomes by far and away the most energy efficient sort of animal powered machine in the world, in the animal kingdom at least. And he has this wonderful analogy when he talks about computers as being the bicycle for the mind, where a computer makes it less energy intensive for you to be able to require to go from a conceptual idea to something in reality, and it being able to leverage the power of human innovation with the power of human intellect. And I think that, the question here is like, was it surprising to see amateur devs building in Scripto? I think one of the things that people forget, or a lot of people don't realize, is how far from amateur someone who is able to build DeFi is at the moment in Solidity. Like it's, you have to be both incredibly like clued in how DeFi works as a system, as from the principles of how you design and build things. And then you have to be a very good developer. And when I say very good developer, we're talking like top 1% people who have just like hammered at this and made all the mistakes. And then we talk about this in the keynote. We talked about this a lot and elsewhere about how long it is time to talent for Solidity, like 18 months to 2 years. And our intention with Scripto was always to create this bicycle for the mind for building DeFi. It isn't amateur devs that we're seeing try things out. It's people who are able to get to the point that would normally take them 2 years in a much shorter space of time, and it's incredibly humbling and exciting to see. But what already is clear in the Scripto community, if you go into our dev channels in either on Telegram or on Discord, is these aren't amateur developers. These are people who like run the full gamut. You have people who have been developing for like 20 years and are incredibly competent, and then you have people who are just getting started in crypto and DeFi, but like the speed at which you can get to the point where you're building DeFi using Scripto has been, I found it amazing because I'm not a developer, and so it's wonderful to see. And the thing that I love about it is that I can actually go in and read the code most of the time as well. I'm like, oh, this is amazing. It's human readable. I understand what it's doing. So yeah, that was awesome.
Yeah, and I think at some point the code will get complex enough that it's like it won't be, you'll get great big Scripto contracts. They'll start adding more, but it's like the thing is there's no the DeFi concepts that are out there today. The things that people are doing in DeFi today are really conceptually simple in terms of the mechanisms. Like a lot of times the economics are pretty complicated, but like in terms of like the actual mechanism of doing something like Uniswap, it's just sort of like tokens in, little math, tokens out. Like, why is this hard to write in code? And so when you actually see something that's designed to build that simple functionality in a simple way, it is kind of striking that you can just read it. But like you said, it isn't just amateur developers. I mean, even an experienced developer, I think they are unused to the idea that like there's a very specific domain of programming, which distributed ledger systems definitely are a very specific domain of programming. It is a specialized thing. And so experienced developers are used to there being specialized tools for that domain. Like the idea is, even of an experienced developer, if you're just saying like, well, technically you can do these things, but it's going to take you a couple of years to figure out how to do it well. Like most developers just punch out. It's like, it's not ready. Like they're used to being something like, this is a development environment that was built specifically for like Web 2.0 apps. This is built specifically for embedded hardware systems. Like this is what mature development platforms look like. And so I think within the reaction we're getting is just people going like, oh, you guys have actually built this for DeFi. No one's done that before. Cool. It's not limited. It's just built for the purpose. We've actually had a couple of people that specifically have, like, there was one feedback. I won't say where it came from, but we got this one piece of feedback from someone. They're like, this is awesome. We asked them, like, why is it awesome? It's like, this is actually built for DeFi. Like, that's all it came down to. Like, it was just, this isn't a smart contract solution. It's something built for DeFi.
Cool. I'm slightly sad because Ross did have a really nice tangent into this by saying it just works. But on to the next question, which is, can we elaborate a bit more on RDX Works and the name change and the thing there? So you ruined that for me, Piers. I had a really...
That was wiffle ball, and we all missed it. And Adam was,
I know, I was playing in my head, and I was like,
See, this is why you're the chief strategy officer, Adam. It's all just like, it's all coming under from underneath. All right, so RDX Works. This is following a fairly standard pattern. So RDX Works, previously Radix DLT Limited. Radix DLT Limited is what we call the company, and then we sort of realized that it would be it doesn't make sense that there's a company that it seems to be the canonical developer of the system. Like, the whole purpose of this is that this is an open source project, and we don't want RDX Works long term to be a privileged player on the public ledger. We want the public ledger to be a thing that lives on beyond our lifetimes and potentially beyond the lifetimes of RDX Works or any company that works on it individually, because it is a piece of infrastructure that we're trying to build for the world as an open source system that anyone can come and contribute and be part of. And so this follows similar paths as Ava Labs, which is behind Avalanche, or IOHK, which is behind Cardano, and a bunch of other sort of examples of this. And we thought, we came to the realization that we probably needed to change the name, and we thought we might as well get it done. There was no particular timing behind it. We were just it's been something we've been talking about for a long time. And, those who have been following the project long enough know it was actually originally supposed to be called Citranco, which is a secure transactions company. But that is an awful name. Sorry, Dan, it's an awful name. So we decided not to call it Citranco. I don't know why, but Citranco makes me think of the evil corporations in the Umbrella Co. or something like that. Anyway, so it's not Citranco. But yeah, you will see us refer to ourselves as RDX Works rather than Radix DLT. There's still Radix Tokens Jersey, which is the token issuing entity and the entity that does all the regulatory adjacent stuff. There's the Radix Foundation, which is the not-for-profit focusing on sort of development and promotion of Radix and education around the Radix public network. But the development of this project is going to take more than one company, or more than one set of individuals. And so while we aren't yet at the stage that we can get full open source community integration in terms of right deep into the code and all that kind of stuff to the level like Ethereum is with Ethereum 2.0, that is our directional path that we want to get to. And so this is sort of one part of that journey.
And already clearly, the Radix team does not control the Radix network. The Radix network is decentralized and it's run by the community. And so I think it's an appropriate break to make right now. Just make it clear that, we're obviously a valuable part of the ecosystem. We've got a bunch of people that are spending 150% of their time and energy trying to make this successful. But in the end, we're a company at the edge of this network, just like anybody else that's trying to make it successful. And so, it's I think appropriate to give it a name that's not Radix, because we aren't Radix. We believe in Radix and we're trying to do everything we can to make it successful. But we're RDX Works. Plus, RDX Works allows us to use some cool DMX memes. X gonna give it to you.
The good news is, though, that while, as Piers said, sometimes we may refer to ourselves as being from RDX Works, things like the URL for main information is still going to be radixdlt.com. The token is still XRD. Right. All of those things are staying the same. I think the only public-facing place you may see something different is LinkedIn, where all of us work. They'll have obviously RDX Works is its name rather than Radix DLT. And on the team section of the website, which company people working on Radix may change. So publicly, very, very little changes other than occasionally hearing Piers do a different intro. Which he has to try a lot. It's quite hard to say. I think you've got it now, though.
Yes, I mean, there's just have it. I was in such a groove, that chat, the channel where when you've just been moving down the same road so many times that you're sort of in it, and now you have to get out of it, and you're now I have to say this different thing. Yeah. It's fine. I'll get that. It's not like this took like 30 takes before we got it right. I didn't take 30 takes.
My subtle glances every time I say it as well is definitely not to my other monitor either. So anything else on RDX Works? I think that's pretty much it. So moving on to the next question is one we have covered before, but I know is a hot point that people want to know more details of. And Matt spilled a few juicy details in Discord fairly recently, which is what exactly goes into this API refactor we're talking about, and why does it take months to complete?
Yeah, maybe Russ is the master of this, so maybe he takes this question as well.
I'm happy to jump on that. What we call the API refactor actually is just sort of the marketable name for a whole bunch of work going on. I can see that if you're looking at it from the perspective of, gee, why does it take so long just to rename a few REST calls? Then that part of it, no, does not take a long time to do. What's going on under the hood is, if I may use a Piersism, fundamentally the way that we were surfacing information to people in the archive node. It was not suitable for long term. For one, it didn't scale horizontally very well as far as the amount of power needed to serve a number of users was too high, so that we had things like our slowdown of the wallet explorer behavior. The amount of nodes we had to add in order to overcome those problems weren't going to scale to great success at Babylon. But also just that there's a whole bunch of things where you get people in the community that say, I want to do a dashboard that does X. And each one of those specific things, the way that state was stored and indexed by archive nodes, it was very difficult to service these types of requests without specifically writing something to deal with exactly that request. And then if somebody came in and had some slightly different ask, that would be a whole new bit of work in order to make the archive nodes support, querying this specific bit of information that you wanted. So the important thing to do was to say, look, let's not try to hammer down each little nail as it pops up. Let's step back and let's say, okay, it seems like there should be a better separation of concerns here, as far as you have a node that is, I'm participating in consensus and I'm committing this ledger state. And then I have a need to know about history so that I can participate in consensus. And that's separate from, I'm an actor who comes in and says, I want to just find out about history, right? That's something different. And the way the archive nodes were working was trying to be in service of two different masters, and it wasn't working. So we stepped back and said, look, let's start with this. We came up with two concepts, the core API and the gateway API. And the core API is all about just saying, let's have this stream of all the events that happened at just about the lowest level, so that any other thing you want to do, if you're out in the community, you have the raw intel at that point. You can do it. You can now use that low level state to figure out any crazy thing you wanted to. I posted some example in Discord about, people want to know when the moon is in the 7th house, did I miss a proposal or something? No problem. You can write a thing that does exactly that. But we have to recognize
Which, by the way, is also exactly the thing that most exchanges asks us for. It's like, if you're going to do an exchange, they need to be able to observe everything happening on the network. They don't want to just go through little individual queries. So it was like, we knew that he needed this anyway, and it was the request we needed for exchange support.
They're like, just give me an information stream. Like, don't interpret it for me. I don't care about your interpretation. Just give me an information stream.
Absolutely. And we have to recognize that the most common consumers right now are the wallet and the Explorer, and they have an API that they expected from what we're calling, the Node API or 1.0 API. And people have built tools around expecting that API. So it's not like we just want to throw this thing overboard and say, hey, start from scratch. So we said, what the first thing we can do is, and this is what the Gateway API and the Gateway service that Radix is exposing does, is say we're basically providing you a reference implementation of how to consume the core API, put it into a relational database, and then get information that we got out of the Node API already, along with some additional other things. And let this be, if you decide that you want to know whatever say it's important, what's the median amount of XRD held by any account on the network? It's not hard to now get that information yourself. If you start with looking at, and this is all, open source, of course, you could look at how the gateway service works right now and say, okay, I see how I can just add this as part of my data ingestion to cache, to cache this particular value that I want, or how to do a query from existing data to find the information that I want. So API refactor is doing it a bit of a disservice if you think of it as just as, they're just changing the way you call into it. There's a whole lot going under the hood here. And of course, it's not just about making it work. It's about making sure that we have tested it and the information that we're providing is accurate. And so that's why it's not an exercise of just a couple of days. But I can see how from the naming, it'd be easy to be confused. Why can't you just update your REST spec in the space of a week and push it out again?
Yeah, it's restructuring the node itself. It's breaking the archive node into two different things that serve specific purposes, and this is going to help us for the nodes that we run for the benefit of the wallet. And it's also like it's cool to see that there are a lot of people in the community that are running their own nodes for various reasons. Some of them are running archive nodes because they want that to serve their own dashboards, which is exactly what they should be doing. Like this should be the recurring pattern: is that if you're building an app and you're trying to take care of your users, you should be offering your own nodes infrastructure to make that makes it. That allows you to deliver reliable service to your users. And so this pattern we've doing of sort of breaking the low-level node that kind of knows how to talk and synchronize and gather the low-level state, breaking that from a high-level service, which can just be it just looks like it is just a relational database that you would interact with any type of application. Breaking those concerns allows both of them to be way more efficient and that'll be something that you can hand over to developers and say, like, great, you can either use this for an application, just run it as is, or you've got a reference implementation allows you build your own service on top of this to build whatever you need for your users. It's just the right structure. These kinds of things are, I guess, I would say common in enterprise, but I'm not sure why this isn't done more in the DLT space. People seem to kind of want to like lock everything into the node, where it's like, well, no, you really have different purposes for different pieces of the system.
And this also lets us put internally separate developers on separate parts of the stack appropriately without it being, if we need a new type of query out of the archive node, somebody that's on the core node team now has to address this, as that's now neatly split off. And so if there's a need to surface different information, we feel it's useful for everyone, that's not a core node developer's time that's now being used up trying to surface this request that's appropriately at a higher level.
So now Adam...
Ross politely saying, Adam, every time he comes with a question of being like, could we tell Russ, how many so-and-sos did so-and-so do and so-and-so?
This is all the scheme to get Adam off the back of my team's time. This is exactly right. So I can just say,
we can now
Adam, you can hire...
Give it.
Yeah. Have your nephew do this for you, because it's now at the level that it's no problem for him to do this.
Yeah.
I'm slightly concerned he's 4, so I mean that's a big promise.
Get him started early. No better life than as a developer.
Never too young to learn relational databases.
So talking of projects bringing up and people supporting their own nodes and things, the next question is all about that, which is as more and more projects start to appear in the Radix community with Scripto and obviously the Alexandria launch coming up, how does Radix plan on supporting this ecosystem growth? Matt, as kind of CPO, this is very much your wheelhouse.
Yeah. So for those that saw my little keynote at the APE event, we talked a lot about community building, which is definitely the purpose of Alexandria. We are not going straight to, here is a solution that you can launch your business on. This is like Babylon is the point at which we get to the point where this moves on to the public network, and we expect that we're going to have a lot of developers that are ready to go to launch businesses and launch projects at that time. So we're a ways off from that. We're working towards it, but this period right now with Alexandria is really critical, both for us to gather the feedback to make sure that we are building the right thing, so that's ready to go when we get to Babylon, but also building community around these tools, because that's really what in the end this is about. This is how Radix is successful, and this is also how you build a successful DeFi ecosystem. You don't do it by pushing tools into an ecosystem. You provide something that people actually want to use. And so what we really want to focus in terms of where we can spend our resources on supporting the community with Alexandria, it's going to be around community building. And so we've already announced a couple of, very simple things. It's small thing. When you sign up, we have got a developer program that we've announced where if you sign up, we're going to give you $25 worth of XRD tokens. We ask you some questions because we want to understand what is the range of developers. You'll see on the questionnaire, we ask you, like, what's your background? What kind of stuff have you programmed in the past? What's your level of expertise? Because we want to make sure that we understand what kind of developers are coming to us and what kind of developers do we need to serve with the tool. So the developer program is all about that. You'll also see that we've announced that for people that are starting to check examples into GitHub and making those examples available for otherwhere, we also want to incentivize that. We're going to give you a little bit just for checking something in for the first time. And then if you check in an example that actually moves into our sort of master example database that we're pushing into our documentation and really making front and center, we're going to incentivize that quite a bit more, because that's incredibly valuable for it's not just a single point solution for, here is an app that does this. It's like, this is stuff where now 100 developers coming in are going to see that, and they're going to come up to speed faster. And they're going to see the range of what's possible with these tools. So I think, we need a little more time before we formulate programs around this. Like right now, everything is focused on getting the actual tools themselves out into the community as quickly as possible. That's what Alexandria is. We don't want to hold Scripto back until we can sort of announce 5 different programs around and all this kind of stuff. Tools come first. Then after that launch, like in the new year, in the first and second quarter, I think you're going to see that we're going to start rolling out some additional programs to support community meetups for developers, of people that are working in their local area or their university, of like bringing Script to a larger set of developers and attacking different types of developers that might have interest in Scripto. So, and then ultimately, obviously, when we get to Babylon, we're going to have incentive programs. We're going to want to find ways of encouraging developers to build on Babylon and launch platforms, and a lot of ways of doing that. I think we've talked about some of this in the past a little bit. So, but yeah, for right now, it's definitely about community building. Be a little patient for unannounced programs, but this is a valuable use of our tokens and our time to build that community as quickly as possible in a way that's sustainable and grows.
The thing I'll say on this is, like, I always think about money like the volume knob on a radio, right? So like it's a great way of turning up the thing that you've discovered. However, anyone who's used an analog radio, you also have to tune the radio. And the problem with money is that it creates this, and like the reason you're tuning it is bad signal to noise ratio is just basically static. It's this white noise. You can't discern actually information from randomness. And so what money does is it increases the volume. But if you have a bad signal to noise ratio to start off with, you just get more noise. You don't actually get any more information from it. And what's really important in these early stages is really being careful about creating noise when what you really need to start off with is signal, especially when you're building these early communities. And this is what many projects have done badly, like EOS. Like sometimes it's the problem of overfunding. Like you can be like, well, we can just throw money at the problem. But if you don't actually know what the problem is, and you don't know what the motivations behind the people coming in and why they're coming in, the motivation becomes just the money, just becomes the grant. I just come in and I want to build, I'll build something because of the money. And that's not what we're building here. We're building a movement, not a flash mob, which, Matt very elegantly put during his keynote. So it is really important. And the other thing that's sort of important is making sure that you're not trying to incentivize the wrong metric. Like some people will be like, oh, I just want to see the number of projects or the number of things that people are contributing. When actually early in the community, you want to look at the why people are building and make sure that the why is right, that they're doing it for fun because it's interesting, because they want to learn new things, because they see something that they want to do to improve themselves, or to improve to an opportunity to build a project or whatever, that they're choosing Radix because that's the best place to do it for them, or it's the place that they like the community the most, or that they get the most learning from, not because they're being paid to be there. And once you identify the right forms of why, that people are coming in for the right reasons that mean that you're building that movement, absolutely you can start putting money into that. So Matt was talking about meetups being important, talking about like making sure that there are community run events, that there are sort of like resources and like enough funds to help people get started. But it's not but it's just making sure that you're adding the seeds to the point where you have a really clear signal. Once you have a really clear signal, absolutely turn up the volume at that point. Absolutely turn up the volume at that point. But I think what the community may see for a while is feel like we are under-resourcing some of these activities. And it's not because we don't think that there is a huge use for the tokens and the funds that we have available. It's because you want to make sure that the community is building in the right way and have identified the key ways in which that community builds as a stronger community, not just as a noisy community, but something that is self-sufficient, that is self-perpetuating, and that really builds the long-term value of what we're trying to build as a DeFi ecosystem and the Radix platform.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, short-term measures can really undercut your long-term success. It can actually run counter to what you're trying to do. Like if you incentivize the wrong thing at the wrong time, like to make it very tangible, like if you say like, look, we're going to start funding projects that say they're going to launch on Radix, and we start doing that. But if we're doing that around tools that people don't actually enjoy, like, I think this is what has happened on EOS and some of these other platforms, where like you're incentivized something that people wouldn't have done otherwise. The only reason that there is the money. Now, if you incentivize something that people would have done otherwise, but you can make them more successful than they would have been by providing additional support, that then becomes really valuable. So like if we do it too early, if we say, hey, we're going to start, funding, Radix projects. It's like, well, we're not talking about projects right now. Babylon is still ways off. Like right now, we're like, what the key thing is experimentation, it's feedback, it's learning, it's community building, all that kind of stuff. That's why we want to it's the right time for us to be putting our resources into that right now. And that's not going to run counter to our goals because all of those things are, people join the community because the tools are strong and because they can see the potential and where it's all going. And so this is what we need to see what's really catching with people, what people find important, and then find ways of accelerating those people and elevating those people rather than trying to make unnatural things happen too soon.
Right. And imagine what a Telegram or a developer channel may look like if you do it the wrong way. Like you'll just get a lot of people coming in going, when airdrop, when token, when grant, instead of like helping each other out and being inclusive. And like, so yeah, I think that it takes a bit longer, but the long-term payoff is so much larger for the community as well. Like this is not about, I think the whole roadmap of Radix has been building things in the right way. And like, we understand that time to market is important. Like, don't get me wrong. That's a super important aspect of this as well. Like, yes, we're early. The community, the ecosystem is early, but there is a finite time in which that's true. But then there's also like the way in which you can be your own worst enemy with too much funds without a good, repeatable system that you're putting it into, and where you understand what comes out the other end of it is also quality for the ecosystem.
Mm-hmm.
I think a big part of this as well is, in addition to money, is championing people who are in the community.
Right.
Like this is also a really big part of it. And if you, in marketing, it's something often called like a marquee user, someone you can point to and be like, look how successful this user has been with our tool, service, product, or whatever, how much they like it, how much it's improved, whatever they're trying to do, whatever. These are the things we want to be doing post Alexandria. And as we lead up to Babylon, is championing people who are doing things, but that championing needs to be proportional. So again, using another analogy, imagine you create just like one giant project, which you put loads of funding behind, loads of attention. It can seem insurmountable. And if it doesn't have the right grassroots behind it, just in the same way as if you had like a sports team and you only support the elite level and don't have any grassroots, it's like, great, you might have a really good team for one season or maybe pushing it one generation. And then they go, oh, some of these players are getting older or they're moving on to other things. You're like, oh, who's going to be the up and coming people to follow that. And you're like, oh, well, we never invested in grassroots. We never had the right like progression pathways through. You then collapse. And that happens in technology, in sport, in media. And it's really important about building that nice progression path throughout, both as the technology and products we have developed, but also as our community develops. And that is what we invest today in building that as a strong foundation will pay dividends for years, if not decades to come, if done correctly.
Right. And like in many ways, I would be far happier than with a Uniswap beta being built by a Radix community member, and like DeFi Plaza or Aussie Swap or anyone who's coming from our community and deciding to build in us, than Uniswap coming across to us. Like that's better long term, and as just a supporting point to our community and their belief in our platform and their growth within that. So yeah, I big part of next year for us is going to be concentrating on our community, not concentrating on things outside of our community.
Yeah, I would way rather have people that are planning on launching something on Radix, but are also actively contributing to the community and trying to pull other developers in and trying to help other developers, than I would someone that's just purely a mercenary that's just showing up and saying, "Okay, I'll build something if you pay me."
Yeah.
To me, the what they add is something, but it's not too far off from zero. Whereas the community building is 100 times more valuable to me.
Right, and often they have no connection, so they just they build something, then they leave, and it just becomes a dead project. Sorry, Russell.
Right, and that's exactly it. You see this. There's always a difference in software development between somebody who's building something because they know they're going to be here to experience the pain of all the shortcuts they took and something, 4 years from now, this is still going to be running, and somebody who's, oh yeah, I'm on a 4-month contract. Yes, I will meet all the little tick boxes on your delivery checklist, but it's going to be a fragile mess, and I'll just move on because it's not my problem after that. And so we definitely want the former. And if you haven't been on the Scripto channel in our Discord, early signs are it's going to be just like our Node Runner community, in that people are very free with giving their time to help others and helping to debug and helping to explore things together. And early signs are very, very good. And of course, the goal we're having is, of course, is to have another community where you will look forward to going to meetups because you're interested in finally seeing these people, not just because this is strictly a networking thing, it's going to be awful. This should be that you can find people with shared interest, that you genuinely enjoy donating your weekends and nights to building stuff with them. And we see that can also be some of the things that will form these early teams, that when entrepreneurs come into the space looking for, who am I going to get to build this idea I have, that there'll be these natural people who have already risen to the top as trusted community members who can easily pull in support from other community members. And we expect will form the basis of some of these, the first projects that wind up shipping on Babylon that are, new innovation, not just something that's a faithful duplicate of something that exists already.
Yeah, and selfishly, that's what we want as a team as well. Like, we go to these events, we hang out in the community, and it's amazing. Radix community is one of the best communities in crypto, and I say that without being bigging it up. Like it is, it genuinely is. It's helpful, it's insightful, it takes the time to learn and understand the concepts. It's supportive of each other. And that is what will form the core of a world-beating platform, guaranteed.
We like going to events that aren't awful.
Yes, we like going to events that aren't awful. We like meeting people who are in it because they love it, as well as because there's a great opportunity.
Awesome. So talking of things that aren't awful, the next question is, has life changed at Radix since the token price has increased? And are we looking to hire more, do more marketing, more events, and other things that aren't awful?
When marketing, Adam?
When marketing. So I think taking a step back, this year on what we've been doing with marketing, it's really humbling to look back at where we were in January to where we are now. And you forget the orders of magnitude growth we've had in that time. So like before this roundtable filming, because I did know this question was coming up, full disclosure, was like, where actually were we even back in like March, April time this year? And it was like, on Twitter, we were averaging like 500,000 to 1 million impressions a month. Right now, we're averaging kind of 50 million to 100 million impressions a month. Like, that is a massive growth on people who see us and who engage.
I didn't realize it was that big. When you said like 1 million, I was like, that sounds like a lot.
That's
like
high.
100
No, that's not.
million.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like the number of views we get on things, like doing a live stream as a developer event to get 6,000 people to come and watch that live, to see what's happening on something we didn't do a really large push on or loads of ads about or have some famous DJ turn up. Like, sure, we had Piers' hair there, which has a fan club of its own, but yeah, that is a big step, and it's growing on that momentum we've got. And a big part of all the marketing we're doing is how do you grow on that momentum? Just in the same way as building a strong ecosystem is about growing on momentum and having a good grassroots. Like, we did a lot of focus during the summer about how do we build our audience on Twitter so we can have benefits there. And actually, when we see attention spikes like we've had in the last couple of weeks and months, having that strong foundation of a community there that is excited to be around to answer the questions of new people coming in going, what's Radix? What's the difference between EXRD and XRD? Having people there to answer that you lay the groundwork for that months, if not years before you really need it. But my goodness, when it happens, you want it. So when we're looking into next year, like obviously things are going to be getting bigger. We're going to be adding in, as Matt said, things like developer events. We're going to be adding in more content. We're going to have more spending on performance advertising, on influencer marketing. Our content teams, we're going to really refine things like the conversion funnels between someone first hearing about Scripto and actually getting involved in our community of developers. These things will scale up, and it's about scaling them up proportionally to where they are. And a big way we do this, and the ethos we have behind how we approach it, is something that I call, like in my head, I have this idea of taps. Like, you find a tap that you think could be a good way to get some attention out of it, and you turn it on a little bit, and you go, cool, is running some Twitter ads doing anything? And you have a look and you go, yeah, it looks like it could be quite good, or very good, or just generally not awful. And you're like, okay, let's turn on this tap a bit more. And you keep turning it on because it's working, and you get it bigger and bigger and bigger until it either no more water and attention comes out of it, or it stops having a good enough return for the amount of effort you're putting into it, be that time or resource. And then you move on to go and look for a new tap and test other things. And it's building that flywheel up. Now, the other piece of this as well is that you want to get attention at the right time. And this is a big piece of like managing expectations. Like, when we talk about what's coming in Alexandria, we want people to understand what's being delivered there and who is going to be excited by it, who's going to be able to get involved with it. You don't want to come across as either trying to mislead people or convince people that there's some revolution here, like going, oh, wow, Alexandria is when the ecosystem starts on Radix. Like, putting that as a headline could get loads of people to go, oh, wow, I should come and have a look at Radix. But as soon as they come and look and they go, well, hang on, the ecosystem isn't live yet, I can just go and start building. That leads to a feeling of disappointment, which then means that when we get to Babylon and beyond, and that person sees Radix again, they go, oh, those are those people that didn't actually, like, oh, I looked at them before, it wasn't what it was made out to be. And you get that kind of boy who cried wolf problem. So a lot of what we're doing is growing that. And on the hiring side, I'll let Russ and others speak about this as well, but like on the marketing side, this year alone, we've added like a couple of people to the marketing team. In Q1, next year, we're going to be probably doubling the size of the marketing team with new hires, and throughout the rest of the year, adding more. And
I think it's tripling it, actually. If you add the events team as well.
True. Yes, yeah. That is true. And so these things do come in. And then there's also a bit of a lag between when you bring these new resources in, test these new things, get the process in place before they start running smoothly. So like where we're seeing, for example, our activity on Twitter working really quite well now, that was stuff that started back in kind of like May is when we started really scaling that up, finding what was working, what converted, what was beneficial overall, and then refining that, optimizing it until it's a nicely running machine.
And so on the topic of hiring, have we hired, how's our hiring looking, Russell?
Terrific. No follow-up questions. No, I think hiring is really actually going very well. We have I'd say since I've been here, we've not quite doubled in size twice, but we are growing quite quickly. At our team sizes, about
Twice.
the fastest you can go.
Doubled twice
Right,
since
so
Russell
4
joined.
times, right? So as far as at our team size, it's practical to onboard, say, 2 people at once and no more than that, else you can't give the proper attention to someone to make sure that they're coming up to speed and they have the support they need to be useful. And that's pretty much what we're maintaining on our teams at all times. There's 1 to 2 new people. And as soon as we feel comfortable with, okay, this integration is that these people are now sailing under their own power, let's open up the position for, the next hire on the team. I mean, we're going to be continuing to do that for quite some time. And we're definitely growing. If you're saying, oh, you have money, you can now pull an Amazon and just acquire every single competitor and hire anybody who can see lightning and hear thunder. That won't be our model, because that's how you wind up with you lose your that corporate culture and that same focus on the mission that everybody has. And just that's the way you get teams where you don't actually know the people that you're working with. If you try to go too fast, you don't know what are their kids' names and all that kind of stuff, and the things that make you really feel like a cohesive team. Particularly when Radix is a 100% remote company, we do have some folks that go into a shared office, but for the most part, we're all separated, and so it would be easy to lose. Like right now, we're in a meeting. If even before we had met face to face, I still felt very close with Piers, Adam, and Matt, and so forth. And that's something we can never lose. It's very important that even especially when you're a remote organization, that you don't suddenly have you're on this call and there's half the faces are not really familiar to you. You just know their name and they work on this, but you don't know anything about them.
The quality too is so important to us at our scale.
That's exactly what I was going to say, Matt. Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, I mean, just the fact that, like, particularly at this point, like we have no openings for warm bodies. Like, we have no problems right now where we can just throw more people that can fill a gap and just turn the crank and get things done faster. Like, everything we're doing is significant. Everything we are architecting new things, we're building new systems, we are rolling things out onto a network, and so every single person we have to hire needs to be senior. They need to be highly skilled in the area that we're bringing them in on. And so, even if if you, it's inevitable that if you offer whatever salary you want, the 90-10 rule still applies. If we hired a bunch of people from Amazon or Google or what you name it, you're still going to get 10% good people and 90% warm bodies, because that's just what happens at big companies. It's inevitable. And when we're small, rapidly growing, but still at the small end of things, like, quality is way more important than number of people to be able to kind of do the things we're doing, because more people that aren't at that quality level will actually slow you down, because you're going to spend all of your time training and making up for the fact that they don't really get it. They're not really contributing at the level they want to, and things, like, you will be able to do corporate level things on a predictable schedule more effectively, but you'll never be able to do R&D. You'll never be able to do like new development and that kind of stuff at the pace. Like, going faster means hiring quality, not hiring number. And so that takes time.
I think there's a really
I've never been an organization that's done it as fast as we have. Like, I've been honestly stunned at how quickly we have brought in high quality people and brought them up to speed. Like, some of it's luck and some of it is just doing it right, I guess, but like, it's been amazing.
I think that there's this really interesting double truth that sometimes the crypto community seems to believe, or some parts of it, which is you can just throw money at a problem and hire in people, but at the same time, there's the cult of personality where they go, this one person is an incredible person and he should be lauded above everything else because everything else is crap. But then there's this one developer, one person. I mean, the cult of personality around Vitalik, the cult of personality around Andre Cronje, or any of these people actually show to you the difference, the incredibly large difference between the top percentile of people who are good at something and everyone else in a difficult to understand, difficult to engineer space. And so what we look for is not very large numbers of people. What we look for is a very particular set of skills and a very particular cultural fit that means that they can come in and be an incredibly high productive member of an incredibly high productivity team. It's a really different, it's like, It's like doing, an NBA team or a superstar football team or whatever. Like, if you have one or two people who aren't pulling the weight, you actually end up with this feeling of the team performing less well just because they're looking at those people who are like dead weight in the team and aren't pulling their weight as well. So like, you have a very interesting thing that you have to set up. And like, I think a big part of the reason that we have been successful in doing that consistently has been A, not hiring too quickly, B, having a really strong culture around not having an ego, not like being smart, but humble, and making sure that people want the best ideas to win rather than their idea to win, because they're used to sort of being the person that everyone sort of bows down to. That makes for great single lone wolf developers, but it makes for very bad cohesive teams. And there's sort of like that combination of everything. But then once you get to a certain point, there's this wonderful secondary effect, which is that great people attract more great people because it's a great place to work. You're working with smart people, and people are like, wow, this is really great. And sort of they tell their friends and the people they want to come in, and you kind of get a good effect out of that. And it's the same thing in the community as well. It's really not that much different. Like, if you throw money at building a community, you get bad people in the community. However, if you really concentrate on the culture of a community and them supporting each other and them wanting to be part of building something special, building something incredible, and want to be part of that journey and want to be challenged more than just make money. It's about challenge and self-growth and progression. Like, then you will get a place that when people arrive, they're like, wow, I really like being here. This is amazing. Like, that was one of the big things for me about the Ethereum community right in the early days in 2015 when I sort of like first joined, was I wasn't just going to the meetups because I thought Ethereum would be like world changing. I was going to the meetups because the people were amazing. And like, I met some of the most like interesting like people, and like I'm seeing that again, both inside Radix and outside Radix. And it's incredibly exciting to be part of that human movement as well as the technology one.
And if all that sounds good, go to careers.radixdlt.com, please. I mean, those postings change often. So
yeah,
by all means, if you're watching this, you have a leg up on, they both work. You can do radixdlt.com/careers. Or, this was, of course, I would never give a non-working link. You think so little of me.
I didn't know we did that. Just another botch here.
Careers.radixdlt.com. But yeah, seriously.
Right, or /. But do go look at it. By the very fact that you are watching this, you know more about Radix than most people that apply for many of these jobs, and you will have a leg up in understanding what are the things that Radix is about when you're interviewing for Radix. But we are growing. Please do check the site, and don't think that, I don't have crypto experience. We hire many people who don't have crypto experience. That's one of the things you can learn at Radix. At RDX Works, I should say.
RDX Works, exactly.
I will retrain myself.
And if you know anyone else who might be looking for any of our open roles, do obviously spread it around. Like, it's something that the community really can help with. Like, finding the right people is one of the biggest challenges of business, full stop. Like, hiring the right people is, if you ask pretty much anyone in business, they'll name that as one of the biggest hurdles. So if you know people who you think could be a really good fit for a role, do definitely point them to us as well. Awesome. Well, that was all the questions for this round table. As always, if you've got more, please do ask them in the community channels. The mods, Jacob, me, whoever will pick them up and we will find them. I'm not sure if there will be a round table in December, because obviously we've got the Alexandria release on December 15th, and then also the holiday season. So we may do. It may be a shorter one. It may be a special festive Christmas version. I don't know.
Adam's going to make us wear Santa hats, isn't he?
That idea, you could see that pop into my head, couldn't
yes.
you? You could see that, just like, it could be a special, yeah. But yeah, thank you as always, everyone, for tuning in. And any more questions, always feel free to ask in the community.